Seems like it might be a nicer day for this. Maybe. See how far we get. First thing I've done is I've taken the plug which is on the old torch and I snip the wires here where the old connector comes out, because on the new one you just have these two long bare wires, and I've soldered that on and heat shrunk it. I didn't know whether or not to trim that down, so I've just left it long. If I need to make it shorter, I can do that. I'm going to install this into the machine, and this should be a case of just screwing everything together and then giving it a test run, I hope. With this brass section there is some modification required. This is in the instructions as well. This is a universal kit, so it's designed to fit as many as possible. I've had to chop that much off the threaded section. If you put a nut on here first and then cut it, when you unthread the nut, it means you don't have problems with the thread here. The other bit that needs then chopping down is the guide for the wire, and unfortunately I've trimmed it just a little bit shorter than I wanted to, so if I let go of that it disappears all the way in. In the instructions it says to bend this rod to stop it disappearing or falling out, so that's what I'm going to do. Then hopefully I've done all the modification that's needed and I can just plug everything back together, hopefully. The bend in this might not even show up on camera, but you put the very slightest bit into it and it just creates just enough friction to stop it disappearing. Next up is replacing this bit, which is really what tipped me off to a problem. You can see that's the welding wire there, and it's just got so hot it's melted into this guide tube, and they cannot be separated. Tip off on the forums suggested using bicycle brake cable sheath, which is what this is, and it's a very close to perfect fit. It's just a little bit bigger than what was in there before, but the welding wire runs through it nice and smooth. It's got a Teflon coating on the inside, which probably helps with that, and that was very easy to fit. Just chop it with the tin snips, job done. On this end I've got the old plug plugged in, the new wiring. I'll tidy this up a bit. I've also got the eyelet here that goes to the main power and stuff. That's in with the brass washers as suggested in the instructions and tightened down. This is roughly a millimetre gap, again as per the instructions. I couldn't really cut anything further down than I have. That's pretty close. But so far it's going okay. I'm not the most confident person in the world with these sorts of jobs, but everything, everything goes together like it should. I'm going to put everything back together, all the case and everything, so that everything's, I've not got wobbly bits of metal, and then I'll give it a test run and hopefully it works. I have an interesting new problem. The design of this case means that it's vertical here and then it slopes back. But the wire feed that comes out isn't like that. It just comes straight out the front. And this is obviously designed to go on a flat front piece. So I can't put this on without making some sort of packing piece to go behind. I hadn't expected that problem. I suspect the reason you need this bit is for stability, because without it you're relying on this, where it joins inside the case, to take all of the weight and stresses of the torch. So I don't think it's one of those things where I can just not put that on. I think I actually have to put this on. I don't really have anything to make a packing piece, so I'm not sure how I'm going to solve this one yet. I'll have a bit of a think. I'm not going to lie, this job is driving me a bit spare. I kind of wish I just forked out a bit extra and got an original spec torch rather than faffing about with this conversion. It's not that conversion's bad, it's just this isn't something I'm comfortable or confident with. The problem I'm having at the moment is I've got to get this switch connected before I can fasten this down. But because this isn't fastened down, as soon as it moves, it's pulling these wires out of these connectors. And I have no spare wire to play with. I can't just make them longer. It's like exactly the length I need, and it is driving me a bit nuts. I think I've finally sorted it. I've got a spacer to go on here, and then the trim piece that goes on there, so that's coming. Ignore this for now. Euro torch attached, all the front cleaned up, as much repair as I can do. I've glued the frame back together, that sort of thing. That's all nice and tidy. Those wires that were giving me trouble, I finally got them to go in properly. I was having some trouble with the wire feed. So this is the section of brake cable sheath, like bicycle brake cable sheath. That worked really, really well. I'm happy with that. And the brass tube that comes in, you can just see the point of it there, and that runs through here. That's your other part of the wire guide. It doesn't actually line up properly. It's ever so slightly off, and the way I had it before was the tip of the brass piece was back here, where it did line up, but I was having problems with the wire coming through and then just bird's nesting quite badly. I seem to have resolved that by moving the pipe along, cutting out some of the plastic so it'll actually fit. It seems to work. I'm going to give this a run on the car and see how we actually get on with it, and hopefully I can make some progress on this. Got a bit done. The new torch is a little bit awkward to use. The trigger's not where I expect it to be, and I'm having some problems with the metal blowing through. It's a bit variable on the old steel, so the welding's not great, but I'll address all this back later. The problem is this. I had the same issue where it just stopped feeding wire. And what's happening is the brass tube in there, the guide tube, because I cut it as short as I did to fit the way I thought it was supposed to fit, it now leaves a little gap between this and this. And if the wire stops for any reason, like you have a blob on the end and it just gets stuck at the end of the torch, it just keeps feeding into this gap. So I'm going to have to trim this off and thread the wire all the way through the torch again. I'm getting there. The welds are really messy. The gap's really too big that I'm filling in. I'm not going to persevere with this though. I'm just going to get a new welder. I'm fed up with this one. Here's another annoying thing about this conversion. I can't put my welder in the garage without taking the torch off. I've sorted this out. This is now working properly. Good. So today I'm going to try and get this area here filled in. All these sections here finished off that aren't. This trailing edge sorted out here. And then we'll get the outer arch on. I'm hoping I can get this done today. I got my dates wrong on when my MOT is, and today is the 28th of November and my MOT is on the 1st of December. Or it's due, I've not booked it yet. And this all needs doing before then. Great. I suppose it's time to bring you in for a little look None of this is pretty. I am having a bit of a rough time with this one. It's very, very cold today. It's a little bit blowy, so I'm fighting against that. This end's all welded up. I'm going to grind all that back. It looks terrible. This area looks even worse. I'm having a problem with this torch where when I've been welding for a little while the trigger starts to stick. I've had it apart, the switch itself is fine. I've trimmed back the blue plastic just to give the switch some more clearance, but same thing, every now and then when I've been welding for a little bit it starts sticking and then you just can't stop the wire feed. I have no idea what's going on with that. Right, but in here, big patch here at the bottom, that closes off the sill. I need to trim this, which I'm doing after I've put the outer sill section back on, so my shapes are correct. There's a little return here, which I also need to trim back, because you can see there's a bit of steel just missing there, which I just need to rebuild. Small patch up there done. That's some of the worst welding I've done so far, appearance-wise, but it's in, it's solid. Under here, you can see there's the strip of sill there that I've just got to remake. That bit had rotted out. It's been repaired before. Ideally, I'd put a new sill section on here, but I don't have one. So when I find some, I'll put some in and then eliminate all of the various repairs here and make that look better. So I might just get this inner arch finished today. Just these little bits here to tidy up and finish off. And then maybe I'll have enough time just to tack the outer arch on. But, and I mean, I say this as a northerner, it is getting cold today. It's feeling kind of icy, so I think there's probably another storm front circling around. Might just do it. It's 2 o'clock, the light's going, but it's actually got a bit warmer, which is making things a bit easier. I've marked off this repair panel where I want to cut it. I'm also going to cut along this edge here, but I'm keeping all of this. I'm going to offer that up to the car and then cut the car to match. It's not rusty that far up, but I think it's going to make for an easier job of putting the panel on. So it'll end up being a cut around about here, and then it'll drop down there. I do have to rebuild this outer section of the arch because that doesn't come with the repair panel, because they're for a plastic bumper car. Metal bumper arches, they're not available. I've hid all my welding sins with seam sealer. I am not showing these welds on the internet. I have more sense than that. They're strong, but they're ugly. But because it's in the wheel arch, and once the underseal and everything's on, you'll never see this. And all I care about is it's strong and it's keeping the weather out. If I had better facilities and more time, I would absolutely cut this out and do a better job. I'm also fighting with the fact that this thing still has a sticky trigger and I cannot figure it out. As soon as I get the trigger loosened off, a little bit of welding, it starts sticking again. I can't see anything wrong with it. I can't see any marks or anything on it. Just, you take the switch out, the switch isn't sticking. It's something physical about the plastic body of that trigger. I've lost my patience, really, with this welder at this point, so I have decided I'm definitely buying a new one before I do any more welding once this job is finished. I've made a mistake. It happens. This one's a bit annoying though, especially with the welder having been giving me grief throughout this job. I have to take all of this off and do it again. I'm not pleased about this, and this is my own fault. When I put this inner arch on, I was basically following the shape of what fell off, the filler and the rust and everything. What I should have done is check my repair panel. What I did was I offered the repair panel up over what was there, ignored what wasn't wheel arch, because when I did the other side I only had to replace the flared section, and just went for it. The problem is, although I've cut everything out you know, it looks okay. Till you realise this arch should actually be here. And you can see just how far off that inner arch is now. The back edge had dropped significantly, and the leading edge, it looks like they just kept filling it and filling it and filling it as it disappeared. Unfortunately, what this means is the rear end of the arch here basically was almost entirely intact, and I didn't know, because where this point is, that's where the return should be. And at the leading edge, this edge here should actually be about here, because that's how far that had rotted away, and they just kept moving it. Yeah, it's a big job to put this one right. What I have to do is I have to go from this end, across all the way around, and remove the arch lip. I will then attach this arch lip to this arch lip. I'll tack this panel onto the body in the correct place. I'll tack any of this that meets up in the correct place as well. It's going to be tricky. Cut the outer off, and then fill in the gap on the inner, and then put the outer on. I'm not sure how long that's going to take me, especially with the welder playing up like it is. I do not think I am going to make this welding deadline, not even close. I'm going to have to stop. The sticky trigger on this welder has got to the point now where I can't use it because I can't control the wire feed. It just, the trigger sticks and it just runs the wire. I've had it apart, the switch itself is perfectly fine, it's some sort of problem with the handle and I don't understand it. I'm just going to buy a new welder. I am done faffing about with this thing. It's driven me up the wall. The other problem, when I relocated this and tacked it on and cut the extra out because I thought I'd got it on too low, well, I've just been spending a while trying to get the inner arch in and it doesn't want to fit. Now, the fitment issue I mentioned before, where the arch is too far forwards, the inner arch that is still correct. I still need to fix that. But I tacked the outer arch on in the wrong place and I've cut too much bodywork out. This is what happens when you're trying to get yourself to finish things in a deadline. It's getting quite dark now. The camera doesn't really show it, but the light's disappearing fast. And I now have a really awkward repair to do in a really visible part of the bodywork on a panel that's really prone to distortion. On the positive side, the inside, apart from the very lip, is all done. So all these fiddly bits inside the arch, they're all finished. The panel on the outside is still perfectly usable. I have to build this section here, and I'm going to come back at this with a fresh mind and figure out how to template for the inside, because I just can't get my head around it at the moment. I'm not going to hit the MOT deadline. I don't stand a chance. I'm going to buy myself a new welder because I am done with this. Because I've been having so much trouble with my old welder, I decided to cut my losses and buy a new one. And the one that's been recommended to me most widely and seems to have the best reviews is from Artec. I am not sponsored, this is not product placement, this is just what I've bought. I ordered a big reel of wire. I am getting through it at the moment with the amount of work the Maestro needs. The Lanchester's going to need a fair bit as well. Their wire's about the same price as anywhere else I could get it from. It was just convenient to get one at the same time. Everything arrived very quickly and seems to be quite nicely packaged, which is always good. Yep. I mean, there's not really any need to put quite that much padding around just welding wire, but it's nice that they did. So this big box here will be the welder itself. there's our instructions, and that's what model it is. It's a, where are we? An iMig 180. And it's a nice, fairly compact unit, that. It's not too heavy, surprisingly. I thought it'd be quite a bit heavier than that. You do have to order the plug separately, and this is just down to the kind of plugs that are available. So rather than supplying it with a plug fitted, you just order which one is the relevant one you need. Because I'm running this off a household supply, I've just ordered a normal 3-pin plug rather than the heavier duty round, I forget what they're called, they're kind of a big blue plug. And this one takes a Euro torch, which is what I've just upgraded my other welder to. But arguably the one that comes with this is going to be better quality, ought to be for the price. And there's all kinds of settings and things I'm going to have to get my head around. This is a very fancy piece of kit for me. And in this box are all your various spanners and a couple of tips. You have your nice fresh earth cable, and your gas line and some more tips, and the plug, which I'll have to wire on. I've wired a plug onto something for a very long time. And oh yeah, that's the regulator that's in there, which is good because I managed to drop mine. Still works, but it's not great. Yeah, this looks pretty much like the one that I'm currently using, which is good. Oh, that's nicer. The Euro torch kit that I bought, it's reasonable enough, but the trigger on this is in a much nicer place and a much nicer size. So I like that. And that's before I've even used it. Okay. I can't test this at the moment. It's dark, it's wet, and obviously I'm not going to be using a welder indoors, but it does mean I can actually get going, hopefully with something a bit better. For now, I'm going to put everything back in the box. Looks like everything I've ordered is there. Nothing looks to be damaged. I honestly would have been surprised if it had been damaged. The delivery driver was great, and this packaging is fantastic. This box, I think, is going to become a fabric box. It's a nice sturdy plastic box with some handles on, and I do need some more fabric storage, so yeah, that's a nice bonus. Looking forward to using this one. I shall keep you posted.